There's a lot of job pessimism, and it's for a good reason. I often encounter recruiters, I often encounter job seekers, I often encounter people who are generally out looking for work. I'm not talking about the people who are on unemployment and they're kind of like the unemployment zombies. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who are actually legitimately looking for work, actually looking to grow their careers. And and for good reason. There's a lot of pessimism that goes on right now that's swirling out there when it comes to the job market. And I think a big part of it is that we all feel it. We all feel it somewhere. We may not see it on the news. We may not see it on the internet. We may not see it in areas where we expect experts and people we trust to let us know what's going on. And so I think we just all feel that something is not quite right, and we're all trying to figure out what to do about it. And I've actually run into a lot of people, a lot of preppers actually. A lot of preppers are really in super prep mode because they are concerned that we are looking at a global catastrophic economic collapse. Now, whether that happens or not, I mean, I guess we'll find out one way or the other. And I suppose at some point it has to happen. However, I think for whatever reason, whether it's because of a lack of trust in our institutions, people simply feel like things are not going that great. And I know we don't always like these types of discussions. We like everything to be flowery and wonderful and to make you feel good. But, at jobferno, I honestly, I don't care. Okay, so we need to speak the truth. We need to talk about what's really happening in the world. And we need to figure out what we could do about it and what we could do in case something really were to happen. But here today is an example of the pessimism that's out in the workplace. Now, I didn't start this, so I find this kind of fascinating. And let's just kind of read through this. And more importantly, I'm going to read through some of the comments because the comments are actually better and more important to the topic of discussion. So the Reddit post posted by Giants XLII. So, we're talking about Super Bowl 32. Maybe they want Super Bowl 32. I don't know. And so they post, there aren't enough jobs out there. It's very simple. It's very straight to the point. And then they just type, that is all. Which, understandably, they don't provide any context as to what industry they're talking about. They don't talk about whether they can't find a job or what kind of employment they themselves are looking for. So it doesn't help. But I think there is a growing feeling among people, myself included, that maybe something is not quite right. And maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something more to it. And usually the gut is right. And when you have a big gut, it's pretty much always right. And so I went ahead and added a post simply because I think it's relevant. So in 2008, if you weren't around 2008, people really felt like if you have a job, you better keep the damn job and do whatever you can. Because you got to hold on to the thing that you have because it may not be that simple to get another job. And so that was 2008, and it really felt like everybody was just kind of waiting for things to recover before they really went after any other sort of job. For the most part, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as it was advertised, though people did lose a lot of money in the stock market and that sort of thing. But, that wasn't too bad. From my standpoint, I went through 2008. I had a job during that whole entire period. Of course, in 2009, I quit my job to pursue a different career, but that's a whole another issue. But this feels worse than 2008. It really does. We don't have the manufacturing that we had even in 2008. We don't have those types of jobs. Pretty much the only types of jobs that you can really get now that for sure you're going to be able to find is if it's a profession-based job such as like accounting or something in the medical field or something along those lines. Even the IT jobs, which I would say mostly replaced the manufacturing jobs in this country, are going away. So there's just really not the demand of IT jobs that there used to be, even though they do still exist. And so I just want to go through and read some of these comments because I think it's really important. It kind of gives you an idea of what's kind of going on. And so this person says, nearly 25 years here, and I'm not even getting callbacks. My recruiter friends stopped replying to my messages. The math here doesn't add up. Either the media and all of them are lying, or we are in a significant recession and no one is saying anything. I think that's probably more accurate, that we're in a huge recession right now and nobody is saying, nobody is telling you, because they don't want you to know. Because for whatever reason, I mean, there's only a certain amount of dollars, only a certain amount of wealth, certain amount of assets to gobble up in the world. And if everybody is trying to gobble up the assets, that increases the amount of competition to get all the assets. So I assume that if that is the case, then we're in a hell of a lot of trouble. Okay, this person, long education, 7748 says, we are in a pseudo-recession. We place too much emphasis on the markets as a barometer of economic success. Fed's tinkering has helped maintain high interest rates and market strength. Meanwhile, there are still massive layoffs across sectors, not enough opportunities hiring, and the ever-growing cost of goods. Did somebody reply to that? It doesn't help that tech giants keep laying off entire departments, further straining the market because they want to save millions, the few $1 million by hiring cheap labor overseas willing to work for literal pennies. And so you could just see through, the comments that are being placed just on this one posting, the pessimism that we are having. Now, I don't know if all these people are in the United States. I don't know where they're from. But just based on how they are responding, I would say they're probably in the United States. This person says, nah, we're in a recession. If the government has to change the definition of a recession while they're in power, then something is up. Other comments include, are you just cluing in? Media lies every time open their mouth. Okay. Are you cluing in? Media lies every time they open their mouths, or they lie by omission. Okay. And this person says, recession? No, we've been in a depression larger than the Great Depression for years now. The media always saying how many new jobs there are. What they leave out, the important metric, is that more than ever, people are working 2 to 3 jobs, and most of those jobs are barely above minimum wage, which is inhumanly low. Now, the minimum wage is important, and a lot of people at this point really depend on the minimum wage, and they think about that as an indicator as to how good the paying jobs are. But in reality, when we give over the responsibility of negotiating what our wages are to the federal government, then we give away our own power when it comes to negotiating prices with your employer. And so this goes on, and there's a lot of posts here where people just discuss whether we're in a recession or not, whether it's a depression, whether things are going well or not. And for the most part, this is a whole string of posts about, for the most part, a lot of pessimism right now. Like we have this posting, this response here. Try having an advertising and public relations degree and working in a news station while making $16.48 an hour when your sister got a job for 3 times what you make right out of college. I've been looking for jobs for 5 months and nothing except for social media jobs that start at $15 an hour. So there are a lot of postings on Reddit, and it's extremely makes you feel like things are not going well in our country. And you kind of say, okay, well, if things really are this bad, and if this is a true reflection as to what's going on with our economy and how jobs are, and I can tell you from helping other people look for work, there's a lot of people who are really struggling to find jobs, and it's not going well. But if this really is a reflection of real life in America, so there are some things you could do if we are in an economic recession, if things are falling apart the way it seems they are. And honestly, these are things that are common, whether it is a recession or not. But the first thing is just don't quit your job unless you have another job lined up. Second thing, that's always a good rule of thumb. No matter what you are doing right now, if you have a job, always make sure you have a side job somewhere. You have some sort of side gig Whether it's just, I don't know, being a waiter at night or waitress at night, for some local bar or something like that. Even just having a side gig of some sort of side hustle. And when I say side hustle, you really need to make sure that the side hustle is making you money, because if you don't have a side hustle that's making your money, then you need to find something. And not because the money is hugely important, but because if you do lose your job and you need to do your side hustle 100% of the time, at least to help maintain whatever your current economic situation is at home, then you're going to be in trouble when you're not making any money, right? I mean, that's kind of obvious. So make sure that if you have a side hustle, a side job of some sort, make sure you have that and make sure it is making some sort of income, or at least has the potential to make income. So that's the next thing you need to really make sure you do. One of the things that really happens during a recession or a depression, when you read the books about the depression, a lot of those people who lived during that time period just took whatever job they could get. They didn't really care about what it was. If they could physically do it, if they could actually do the job, then they went ahead and took the job. So, if you're somebody who's a very white collar individual and we're in a situation to where, jobs are a bit scarce, you may have to take on a job working in construction or something just to pay the bills. And so next, if we are in a recession, if we are in a depression, the next thing you have to do, so the third thing you have to do, is you need to make sure that you know your neighbors and you have friends and you have people who are themselves trying to work and trying to survive. It doesn't do you any good if the friends, the people that you network with, are all sitting around playing video games and they're completely unaware about what's going on. Because ultimately, if something were to go down, if the economy were to collapse, you need to be, and somebody in your life needs to be the person that says, yeah, I know exactly what's going on. Here's what we need to do. Let's get to work. Now, you may not have a whole lot of work to do, but somebody needs to be aware as to what's going on. So third thing is just make sure you have a strong network of people who are actually caring about the world and actually paying attention and actually want to be ready. Now, along with that, and this is very specific, it doesn't do you any good if you're alone. And I know this is hard. This isn't always the perfect thing. And I know there are a lot of asshole people out there. But one of the last things you want to do while you're in a recession is to go through it alone. Because when you're alone, you're forced to you're forced to be dependent on people that you don't know for support. Whereas if you have somebody in your life, whether that's somebody that you're married to, or somebody that you've been with for a long time, you need somebody that you can trust and somebody that is going to work with you and fight with you through the recession. So again, I know that can be kind of tough, but it's true. Just make sure there's someone else in your life. 4, there may come a time when you don't really know where you're going to get food, where you're going to get water, that sort of thing. And if you're in the city, this is particularly dangerous. But we need to make sure that if it does become tight, where money does become tight and you're not really sure how you're going to get resources, that you know where you can get clean water, that you know where you can get clean food. Because things may not always be perfect, and you're going to need to make sure that you know what you need to do in that sort of situation. The final thing about this is make sure that your debts are paid off. I know that becomes incredibly difficult, but we could be looking at a time where, you might have a car and you might have a car payment and you may not be able to make that car payment. And it gets kind of tough when you have to make a car payment when you don't have any money in your bank account. And the reality is, whether we believe it or not, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. There will be an end to the recession. There will be an end to the depression in one way or another. Even if the world falls apart, economic and everything collapses, and we fall into World War III, it doesn't really matter. Eventually, there will be pieces to pick up, and you need to make sure that you have the resources that you need to survive and to move forward in your life. So ultimately, here's the deal. The economy is eventually going to have to crumble. The economy eventually is going to collapse. Things in the United States are worse. They are as bad as it feels inside in your gut. You know there's a problem. You know, whether you want to choose to ignore it, whether you choose to accept it or not, doesn't really matter. But we all know that something ain't right. And that's the reality. Something ain't right, and we're going to have to do something about it. In my own personal life, I'm trying to build relationships with people who are like myself, people who are younger, people who are going to be around for quite a while, and actually a lot of older people who really want to help younger people succeed because they know, they see it, that things are not going well and things are not going to continue as they are. And so we need, as people, to be sure that we are prepared. And ultimately, we need to be teaching the next generation how to do things like can, and how to do things like make a blanket, weave, do things that we were never taught ourselves. And it's up to us, because the prior two generations said, well, I just want to make much money. I don't really give a crap about that stuff. I don't really care. Why would you want to know that? And a lot of them take on that attitude because they got theirs. They had a full life of not needing it. And now they're about to die. So they don't really care that much. But we do. Oh, we do. And oh, if we don't right now, we are going to need it. And so if you still have an older parent in your life, an older grandparent, ask them, how do I do this stuff? What do I need to do to succeed if the economy really does collapse and collapse hard? Just understand, if you are looking for a job right now, you need to be acting like it's a recession, because we are in a recession. It feels like a recession because the amount of jobs that are out there and how people are getting hired is exactly how people get hired during recessions. Okay, there's not just a lot of jobs popping up. There's not a lot of small businesses that are popping up. During COVID, a lot of small businesses got wiped out. And small businesses make up a majority of jobs that are out there. And during COVID, a lot of those guys got wiped out. They got wiped out. And so it feels like a recession, and that might be more due to the fact that there are more people in the workplace. There are more people who are competing for the same jobs because they used to work for small companies, and now they work for nobody. So what is the right answer? The right answer is to be ready and stay prepared. I'm SP Graham. This is jobferno. If you got any questions, send me an email at questions@jobferno.com. And as always, choose skills over money.